Welcome back to Make Your Locos How-Tos. Today we're going to show you how to replace a capacitor on a home AC unit like this one. This is a Carrier 2-ton unit, and we're going to change the capacitor out on here. It has failed, and the compressor won't turn on anymore, and nor will the fan now that it's fully blown on there. So we're going to go through some safety on here first and how to do it. Now these are all pretty much in the same area. They should all be easily located on the outside under the service panel. Right there, you shouldn't have to go into the guts of the actual AC unit itself. So it's a pretty easy job, but there are some precautions you need to take before you start delving into there and pulling that cover off. Okay, the first thing you want to do is turn off the power at the breaker and the fuse panel, whether it be in your garage or downstairs. Turn that off, and then come up here over to the service box out here, and these usually slide down like so, and then you can open them up, and there's a quick disconnect right here. You just grab it and yank it, and then there's no physical possibility of jumping those two terminals on there, and you'll be safe to work on it. Also, what you want to do is make sure your thermostat is off, so it doesn't command the AC on us out here also, because it'll power the contactor and everything else. So once all that's off, everything's totally off, all those three items on there, we can come over to the service panel and start taking some screws out and get to that capacitor and change it out. Okay, now in this particular unit, it has a single capacitor. It's called a dual run capacitor that boosts both the compressor and the fan. So it has a couple different terminals on here, whereas if you have a dual capacitor setup where there's two different separate ones, they should only have two terminals on there. So over here on the side, you'll see is the service panel right here, and that's usually backed by all the AC lines, and of course where your power comes in from the wall unit there. So there's a couple different screws in here. We'll take those out of there, and we'll get this cover off, and we'll get to that capacitor. Alright, we'll get this thing off of here. Now most of these are 8mm that hold these on, and that's just simply slide off of here. Now on the inside here usually is the most common components that fail. It's all your electrical side type stuff. So right here's your contactor, and then here's your capacitor on there, and this one's obviously puffed in the side here. I got a whole video on how I diagnosed that without any multimeters or anything like that. So what you want to make sure of, if you want to be extra precautious, is these two lines that are coming in do not have power. The fact that the air is off inside, also make sure the contactor right here in the middle is not contacting and sending power out. But you want to make sure all the breakers, even your disconnect outside here, is disconnected and make sure there's no power. Now, just because there's no power doesn't mean it's totally safe to touch anything in here. What you have to realize is the capacitor, dead or not, half dead, they still do their job. They're like a battery. They hold voltage, so you can get a nasty shock from these things. So you want to let them dissipate for a little while you're getting the cover off and everything else. Come out with your tools, turn all your power off and let them dissipate for 10-15 minutes, but still be mindful of all these terminals on here. So what you're going to want to do is obviously make sure that your new capacitor is the same farad rating as the old one. Now this one's a 30 plus 5 farad rating on there, so I matched it up, and of course you can see it's the same cylinder style on there, and more importantly the farad rating on there is correct. And you can get these online. I'll put a link down below where you can get them shipped right to your door, nice and cheap, and save yourself some time. So on here there's a bracket right here that straps it into the unit itself. So you want to do is get the screws out for that, and usually they're 1/4 inch on there, and that'll loosen the whole unit so you can get to the terminals and start swapping them over one at a time over to the new capacitor on there. Like I said, make sure you're very careful with this. You do not want to get shocked by these things. Okay, so just be mindful of the wire routing on here. You can see mine goes up and through, behind the black wire and stuff like that. Be mindful of that. Otherwise, we're going to swap them one terminal at a time on here over to the new one. Now on these, there's a fan, there's a Herm, and there's a common, which is where all the power comes in on there. So the common, of course, is going to have two different wires on there, whereas the fan and the compressor have just one output for each one of those on there. So in case you get lost, brown is usually the fan, blue is usually the compressor, any kind of yellows, stuff like that is usually the commons on there. So if you have to, take a picture before you take it apart, or you can do one terminal at a time like we're going to do. So I'll put you back down over here so we can get the AC working in this house. And you don't want to yank on the wires, you want to yank on the terminal itself. That's why it's very important to make sure that it's fully discharged on there. So we're just going to line up. This terminal right here is the Herm. So we got Herm right here. So we're just going to take it off of there. Like so. Okay, you see that? And then we're going to put it on our Herm terminal. Just like so. Okay. And then let's get the fan going. Pull that one off there. Same thing. Get it over the fan. Now, you'll see these have multiple terminals on them. They all go to the same lead inside the capacitor though, so that's just extra terminals for accessories and stuff like that. Like the common terminal here has two different wires on it, but they're all going to the same part inside the capacitor. So you can just take these off, put them to the side, and get this old one out of here, and then we can go to our common over here. Okay, that has a C on it, and we're going to get these guys on there. And like I said, whichever way it goes on there, it doesn't matter which terminal. All the terminals on there go to the same place. So make sure they're fully secured on each one of those, and that's all you have to do to change the capacitor out on there. Now at this point, just make sure you feed it back up in here correctly, so none of the wires are being yanked on or rubbing or pinched anywhere. Okay, just kind of route those around like that, and we can take our bracket and put it back up in here around the new capacitor. And you can see the way I have it, I have the screw in there, which is kind of wedged in there right now, but it holds it so I can line it up with the first hole on here, right there, and everything's held in place. Now we can get to this bottom second screw. We can line up the hole in there with ease. Okay, now before you tighten any of this stuff, you want to make sure these are all routed correctly, nothing's yanking, and the approximate location of the capacitor in there is correct. Okay, you can see ours is just about perfect right there. So we can go ahead and cinch these down. And just as a post check, just make sure everything's routed in here correctly. Nothing's gonna fall off. All your terminals are on there nice and tight and stuff like that. Okay, now as a post check, before you ever put that cover back on there, we see everything looks just fine on there. What you can do is go turn the breaker on inside the house. You can go turn the fan on, or the AC on, with a thermostat, and come over here to your disconnect box, and we can put this in here, and I'll be able to listen for the compressor and the fan to kick on right away and make sure they sound normal and everything looks fine on the inside terminals on there where we just worked. So we'll go ahead and plug this in like so, and we'll listen. And you can see right there when the power was supplied to it, it came on right away. The compressor came on nice and strong, and the fan came on at the exact same time. no problems, and you know it's fixed right then and there. So let's come over here and verify everything looks good. Everything looks good inside of there, and then you can go ahead and go inside and make sure the air is coming out nice and cool and the system's actually pumping and working. And then we come back out here, disconnect the power once again, and put that side cover back on there and complete the job.